Brandon Trust is 20 years old, and it's given us a wonderful opportunity to reflect on what has happened over the last 20 years, and certainly for ourselves to think about both what's happening, but maybe what some of the challenges are over the next 20 years. Big topic, and we kicked it off at our 100 Voices conference this summer in the Emirates Stadium in London, where we brought together over 200 people we supported. And we had a lovely time where we spent the day together, first of all celebrating the achievements and stuff that people are proud of, and they are very, very wide, varied and many, and so that was very encouraging. We then moved the conversation on to think about the future and actually what people's aspirations were. And the hidden thing in that was, well, what's stopping us getting to those dreams? And we ended up, at the end of the day, writing newspaper headlines for what life would be like in 10 years' time. And it was very inspiring. But the conclusion of all of that came out was, do you know what? Lots is great, but we so want much, much more of what's happening. We want more connections. We want more opportunities to work. We want more friendships. We want to spend a lot more time actually out and about doing stuff and not being dependent on organisations like you. So from that, we then decided to think about, well, if those that we support are saying that they want many more connections, what about the world out there, and what about people who don't have learning disabilities, the general public who aren't working in social care and don't have any particular connections? How connected do they feel they are to people with learning disabilities in the UK? And we got a survey done of over 2,000 members of the public. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly at all, 54% of the general public said they didn't know anybody at all who had a learning disability. And then out of the balancing 46%, a third said yes, they did, but it was simply because somebody with a learning disability was either a neighbour or lived in their street. 24% of the people who said they knew somebody said yes, they did know somebody and knew them quite well, but they saw them less than once a year. So what we saw there was people saying, we want to be connected on the one hand, and we saw the general public telling us, actually, people with learning disabilities are invisible. I am not connected. The really good piece of news in the middle of it all was over 90% of the population, and I think this would have been very different 20 years ago. Over 90% of the respondents said people with learning disabilities absolutely have a role and should be involved in our local communities. It would be great if they were. So that feels like we're in a different environment, which was good. So we began to put our report together and think about, well, what is happening in people's lives. And at the heart of the report, you'll see there's 3 great stories. And what we wanted to do was celebrate success. And we had 3 volunteers who said they would be they would be willing to share their stories. Jade, Phil, and Barbara. Sorry that actually none of them are here today. 2 of them live in the far distance of Cornwall, and it was too complicated. Jade was on the radio all of yesterday, and I think is absolutely exhausted. But anyway, each of their stories is different, but the thing at the heart of them is that they are really, really connected. And what has become very clear out of looking at their lives and the learning from that is that the way in which they are supported enables that to happen. That those that are engaged with them are getting out of their lives and spinning plates and acting as catalysts and not actually becoming the solutions in people's lives, not the end place. Why are connections so important? Well, I think they're pretty obvious, really. First and foremost, we come back to the well-being issue, where people are really well connected, and that includes all of us. Our sense of well-being is much better. And of course, we've only got to look at all the research that is coming out at the moment around older people and isolation and mental health and physical health issues. We know being connected is really good for our well-being. The second rationale around being connected is that actually there's real evidence that where people are well connected, they are much safer. So again, when we hark back to what's happening in terms of the Winterbourne report yesterday and all the stuff around institutions, we know where people in either large-scale or small-scale settings are segregated and are away and not connected, that actually their chances of being abused are much higher. But where people's lives are open and lots of people are coming and going in their lives, they are safer. The third is possibly an economic benefit, and that's simply that where people are connected, there is real evidence that their support is more robust, that actually it is better value for money, and that actually through the ups and downs of life, actually people's arrangements are more robust over the long term. Finally, it's very important that one of the things that came through loud and clear, and again this is not new, but it's that everybody has something to give. So where people with learning disabilities are connected, and these 3 individual stories show it, they themselves aren't just getting something from that connection, but actually they're contributing and giving something really, really rich and beneficial to the communities they're in. And we see that time and time again. So there's a number of suggestions, recommendations at the end of the report, but I guess I want to pull out 2 key themes, I think, in terms of the way forward. One is, I think we need to measure success in the future in terms of how well connected people are. Not in terms of how many hours of support people have had or how safe they are or whatever, but actually if we could look at how well connected are people's lives and see how we could measure that as success. The other key theme that comes through for me is that in order for everybody to be really well connected and for society's ideas and understand and kind of perceptions of people with disabilities is that to happen, there really needs to be still a radical change both in attitudes and in terms of practice.